going out there, YouTube? This is SEL0320 representing JVS. I'm back again for a brand new early movie review. I got the pleasure of being able to see this movie before it comes out on its release this Thursday. And the name of this movie is called Risen. Notable stars in it, I guess really not too many big ones, but probably the biggest would be Cliff Curtis and Joseph Fiennes and Tom Felton. It's actually really interesting dynamic because basically you have a character by name of Clavius, and he's basically a centurion. He's the person that is overseeing what happens to the body after the death and the burial of Jesus Christ, or what they would pronounce in this Yahshua. The thing about this that is, from looking from the eyes of Clavius, is really internalization, because you got somebody that's not a conformist. They're not a person that believes. They're technically agnostic in the sense that they don't believe in one central power or one God. He's really callous. As a matter of fact, the dynamics in the beginning of this episode is actually showcased pretty well, and that'll be a good segue from the look of this. As far as the locations and what they shot, they actually did some really good cinematography for a movie that's not really high budgeted, and also being a Christian film. I think they actually did a really good job with the camera angles. I think they did a good job even with the presentation for certain scenes where they require like fight sequences, even specifically in the beginning. It kind of threw me off because I was like, man, am I looking at Troy? Because this is a PG-13 movie, but there are violent moments, and they are not shunning away from them. They just kind of like stop the screen at the moment where you actually see it. Like for instance, if you see somebody actually crucified, what they have to break off the knees and then allow the weight to actually kill the person, and that's one of the things that actually happens in this movie, as well as like even one of the fight sequences in the beginning, you actually see like somebody getting like cut up, like a boulder just rams in somebody's leg, and it's really gritty and really raw, and it's done really well. Even like the capture of certain sequences where there was CG elements involved, and even like the capture of certain moments when you see in a person's close-up and their interaction of what's going on in a specific scene, specifically Clavius, when he's trying to figure out what's going on, depending on if it's like, all right, I want, like, say Pontius Pilate is telling him, I want you to oversee what's happening to this body. Like, you're seeing his mood and what's going on with him, and I think it was done really well as even the soundtrack. The score for this was actually done really well. I think the moments that meant something and where they were really quotable and where they were really impactful, there was such a subtle score to it that I actually really enjoyed the scenery and the score for this. Specifically, I don't think this is a really high budgeted film. I think they did really well for what they were given. So let's talk about the acting. The thing about it is Joseph Fiennes plays this really interesting character in the beginning that starts off really slow in the pacing of the movie, but his portrayal of this man that sees this event that's unquestionably crazy, because the whole point of the movie is that he is the person that oversees Jesus' body as it's being brought to the tombs, because all the people that had an issue with Jesus, they were like, okay, it's been prophesied this man's going to come back, somebody's going to go and take his body and move it back, and there's going to be mass chaos. And what happens, which we know from biblical context, is that the body is gone, but it's been broken out. And it's like when you see his dissection of trying to figure out what happened and interviewing all these different kind of things, it's actually really thought-provoking, because the way he interacts with each character, from Bartholomew, which the guy that plays Bartholomew, he actually did a really good job, because he had some interesting quotable moments, specifically when he was telling them, he was like, where are the other disciples? What have you done with this man's body? This, that, and other. And he's asking where they are, and he gets up really close to him. He's like, we're everywhere. Like, I'll talk about that more in my spoiler review from a Christian perspective, which is going to be really fun to actually talk about. But as far as just his acting in it, I thought he did really well. Like, he played the role of what seemed to be maybe a 30-year-old or a more seasoned vet centurion. Like, he's all about the battle and the grit, but then when you actually get to see him interact with Yahshua and how that changes and metamorphoses his whole entire reality. It's a beautiful thing to watch, and he definitely plays the role. Even I guess Tom Felton, like when I first looked at him up there, he plays the role of Lucius. He's kind of the underseer of Clavius, and it's kind of be in training, trying to get to his role as a centurion role. But it's crazy because he actually does a good job. Like, it wasn't anything really bad about it. It's just the fact that I think about him as Mouth Boy from Harry Potter, but he actually does pretty decently. What is it? Peter Firth plays the role of Pontius Pilate, and he actually has some really key moments that he interacts with Claudius in this movie, and I think it's commendable. Actually, I think they did it really well, because a lot of times the interpretation of, like, it's either really vague, like Pontius feels bad about what happened, or he feels it out of necessity, or just because of the pressure. Like, you see all of that. I think they take real careful notion of showing how Pontius is actually feeling in that, and it really internalizes his character from a movie standpoint. And actually, I think they did pretty well with it. But the one person that really was stood out, and even with the disciples, like the disciples, there are no names essentially. Like, I mean, I think the only one that I would kind of say pick out of everybody would be Peter, and Simon Peter, played by Stuart Scudamore, because he actually has some really key moments with Josephus, the role of Claudius, and like, I love their interactions together, because they start off, you know, butting heads really strongly for certain reasons I don't want to disclose in this review, but it progresses really well, and he acts it pretty well. But the person that steals the show is Cliff Curtis. Reason why I say that, and this is Travis from, if you looked at Fear the Walking Dead, this is the same exact actor. If you looked at Training Day, same exact actor. If you looked at, what was it, Live Free or Die Hard, same exact actor. He's a great actor, but the way that he portrays Jesus in this movie, I think, was what sells it for me, because I've never seen Jesus been put to life in this such way. I've seen Willem Dafoe play it. I've seen Henry Cavill. Jim Caviezel play it. I've seen different people play the role of Jesus, and what ends up happening in the beginning stages, we see all different feats and the miracles and stuff, and then we see the devastation after the point when, you know, Jesus' life is taken out of self-sacrifice, and we understand that redemption side of it. But what this movie does, it takes after the death, and shows what it really means of the ascension. And really, the title in itself is Risen. And because, like, the way that he portrays the character, he portrays the empowerment of what the driving force of what Jesus was putting into his disciples. Like, what was his real meaning behind what was happening? Because given through the eyes of this centurion, it's like, what am I witnessing? What miracle? What, magic in certain sense he was saying. It's like, what is going on, And it's like everybody's life from this point on even changed. And it's like, you get to see the miracles ahead of time with most movies, but you never get to see the reverence and the power and the amount of joy that he interacts with every single person. It's always like a reciprocation of love with empowerment, because it's like, you can tell that this is a man that you would be able to talk to, and he would be able to just show love to you regardless if you've wronged him. And I think that he plays that innocence and that loving, but then at the same exact time, elegance of wisdom, empowerment of will, and I love that about his portrayal as Jesus. Like, I think that this might be one of the most defining versions of Jesus that I've actually seen. I would actually love to see a beginning, like, of just seeing that portion of it, but I think that for this movie, it worked in the most intimate moments, because the whole point, and this is a good segue into the story, to me, I'm not going to describe to y'all the story of this. I've kind of described that just through the acting. To me, the movie symbolizes them trying to pursue him even after his death. Like, the pursuit of Yahweh, the Messiah, from their perspective, and even from just the name Jesus, like, there's so much power and richness of it that sometimes it gets lost in the crossfire, that the fact is that after this man's death, these men were still pursuing not just his ideals, but this man himself. It was like there was never a moment that after there was a point where they saw him and he was gone, they were like, where are you? Where are you? Where are you? It's like they're in pursuit, in need of him. One of the most quotable lines that I think that Simon Peter has said to Clavius, and I'm not sure if Simon Peter said it or if Bartholomew said it, is that it was actually Jesus that said this to the Clavius. He has said that you are witnessing the things that is going on now, and they are in pursuit of me, they need me, they feel this need to be around me, and you are witnessing the miracles. What about everybody that perceives this point that does not have the ability of witnessing these miracles? How can they be able to really get to the point that you are? Because you have the advantage of actually being able to witness this. Other people, they can only hear it from hearsay and what was told to them, and they have to be able to receive this internally. And from a spiritual perspective and a biblical perspective, like, that's great storytelling. Like, just quotable moments like that makes me want to see this movie again, because the moments that are quoted to me in the film, like, they really uplift you. They literally empower you, and they actually beg the question, like, from even non-believers' perspective, the evidence that Clavius, even though he's technically a fictional character, the evidence that he has to sit there and dissect, put yourself in the situation of this man, and you're sitting there going through grave for grave trying to find, where Jesus' body is. Trying to go intersecting with different people that from 3 days later on, the body's going to be decomposed. And then yet you see a man in living flesh right there. That has to do something to you. And there's eyewitness accounts of it. And not just that, one of the things that plays into this is that they saw him in different moments before his full ascension of never coming back again. And it's beautiful to watch, and it was a great film for me personally. I guess for me, I would give it an 8.5 out of 10. For a movie person, just from looking at it and the budget and whatnot, I couldn't give it anything lower than like an 8 or a 7.5 out of 10. It was still a good film. It was an uplifting empowerment film, and it brought resonance to the story and the portrayal of Jesus Christ in its entirety. And I think that all the actors committed to it. There were certain moments that were kind of like iffy and shoddy with Bartholomew. He was kind of running off kind of weird. And even like, I think certain people are going to look at the disciples like, that's not how disciples be. But if you look at Christians nowadays that have a love for God and that are really open about their faith, they're the most weirdest but forthcoming people that you would know. And I'm one of them. Like, y'all know that I'm weird, but that's just how I am. Like, I have a love for other people because of my ability to be able to love from my interpretation, because Jesus taught me how to love. Like, I learned how to love from just what I've gone through in the process of my relationship with him. And so, for me, this is definitely a special film. For me, I'll give it 8.5 out of 10 just because of me personally. But if I had to give it from a critique standpoint, 7.5 or 8 out of 10, between there. But it was a good movie. I think you should definitely go and check it out this weekend if you can. And stay tuned, stay locked. JVS, we ain't gonna stop. I'm about to do this spoiler-filled review in just a second. Peace, y'all.